Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. I'm very excited to bring to you another special guest and special interview with Sam Schild today. Before I get into introducing our guest, though, just wanted to hit on a few things here. Most of you guys know, obviously, that this podcast is powered or hosted by Outdoor Vitals, and we've got some pretty awesome things going on over there right now. In fact, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see that this shirt that I'm in, yes, it is an altitude t-shirt, and we're going to be releasing those if we haven't already released them already. So you're going to want to check those out. And we've also got some really, really sweet and unique shorts called the Skyline shorts, trail shorts. So go check those out. 2 releases that'll be coming out any day. So with that, though, let's go ahead and bring on our special guest. So Sam, I actually met Sam when he came out and did some backpacking with us here in our backyard in Zion National Park. Really resonated with him. He's done a ton of distance hiking from the PCT to the CDT, and he's also hiked the Colorado Trail not once, not twice, but 3 times, and he's bike packed it. So he's very well seasoned backpacker as well as bike packer, and it was fun to talk a little bit about bike packing, which is something we haven't talked. But what's also really unique about Sam is he is a writer. So he went to school, Temple University, got a master's in fine arts for creative writing, and has just a very unique story of how he got into writing. And now currently he's a freelance writer for many publications, many that you would know, from Wirecutter to New York Times, Gear Junkie, Outdoor Gear Lab, The Trek, CBS News, just many, many publications. He's very talented at writing. And we talk about what it's like to be both a writer and someone who's a minimalist outdoor person, someone who's out there trying to create new adventures and have new memories as much as possible while still balancing a career in writing in the outdoor space. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, you guys are going to absolutely love this conversation with Sam Schild, and we'll go ahead and bring him on right now. All right, Sam, I'm super excited to have you on here. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, if I was going to catch you, calling me from your van or or if that's what you call your van, or if you'd be out on the road on the trail where you're at, but it looks like you're actually in a building at this point in time. So getting some work done, and just never know with you, man. You live a pretty awesome life, but how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah. I'm at my house in Denver, Colorado. I actually just moved into a different house. And I live in like a finished attic room of a house that my friend owns. So I'm fortunate to be renting from like a friend and not just a random landlord. But yeah, I've been in Denver for the past like month or so, kind of working pretty hard on a lot of writing projects, but I'm pretty soon the call of the van and the camping anywhere and working remotely will pull me away again.
So I guess what you're saying is you do actually do some work at times, and then you blitz that, and then you take off back out to the trail. Huh?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much been that's been my MO for like the past decade. Really, is like blitz a bunch of work, and then like for several months at a time, and then go take off for a while, and then come back and work really hard, and then take off for a while. Like the past 2 months or so, I don't even know how many words I've written, but it's probably been close to like 1 million words. Sometimes Grammarly tells me, like I look at my Grammarly word count for the week, and some weeks at like busy times of year, it's been like close to 500,000 words that it checks. So that's a ton.
So,
but I'm getting to the end of the work blitz, and now it's time for the play in the mountains and work a little less time.
If the snow level ever melt off, you'll about have timed this perfectly. So You write for a ton of different publications. I guess you're technically a freelance writer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a ton of articles and words to, I guess, have been writing, if I can talk here. How many different publications were you writing for over this last month or two in this?
It was like three, I think, and it was a lot of it was like three publications, and I have a couple like copywriting clients also. I try to do more like copywriting versus like outdoor writing, or it's probably more like a 60-40 split for outdoor writing versus copywriting. But I try to mix it up so it's not just all outdoorsy stuff. But
Yeah, I mean,
about three publications of. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it was like three or so publications, and sometimes I just get a lot of assignments from one publication, and then I just like churn them all out pretty fast. And that's kind of what I've been doing lately.
I think to the general public, they didn't understand before, or they haven't understood before they meet outdoor writers, that a lot of you guys are freelance. I think like historically, before I started meeting writers personally, it was like, okay, you write for one magazine. You are a backpackers magazine writer, and that's it, right? But it seems like the majority of everyone writing in this outdoor space is actually freelancer. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. That's pretty common for most of the outdoor writers to be freelancers. There's probably like, I don't know, a couple staff writers per publication, and they're actually more the editors than the writers. Like if you're a writer and not an editor, chances are you're a freelancer.
Yeah. Does that bring in any like uncertainty for you, or did it when you first started down this path?
Oh yeah, all the time. I have lined up as far as like income streams right now. I have like very, very, very little in the future that I actually have, like that I know I'll have. So I'll have to like pitch a lot of stories in the next like month to have some income. But other time, it's definitely like a feast and famine thing a little bit, but I'm sort of used to it. I've like worked a lot of like crappy jobs over the years, just like in between doing stuff that I actually care about. So I'm pretty used to like not always having a ton of money, and I live pretty simply. So it works out for me.
Yeah. When did you know that you wanted to be a writer in this space?
Maybe about like 3 years ago was when I first like started to get the idea. Because once upon a time I worked for a newspaper and then I graduated from college, and then that was around 2009 when when the big recession started, and then newspapers weren't doing so hot at that point. So then I went to grad school and like was teaching at Temple University. And then I like got an MFA in writing, and then realized that being an adjunct professor, which is like pretty much the job that you could get if you have a graduate degree in writing. And that was just like a contract job also. And those contracts were like less than some of the copywriting gigs I get now for a whole semester's worth of teaching. And then I did that for a little while, and then I just quit. I rode my bike across the country and like started working in bike shops. And so like about 3 years ago, I just started thinking like, man, I can't just work in bike shops forever. I'm like in my 30s. I see like some other people that have worked in bike shops until they're like older, and I just knew that wasn't for me. So then I started like thinking like, well, I love the outdoors, and I'm really good at writing, and I bet I could combine those things. And then I just kind of started trying, and so I'm still figuring it out, but it's kind of working out these days.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you took quite a break from writing. I mean, from the time you left kind of college and went into bike shops and all of that. I didn't realize that. I thought you just wrote straight through, but no, that's really interesting. So then I guess from there, you've done some pretty amazing things, right? Because I think I want to get into like how simply you live, and I think that's a really fascinating, minimalist aspect that allows you to go and do just so much. But let's back up, I guess, and just start back with you riding your bike across the country. Like what was that about for you?
That was something that like I had always wanted to do since I when I first got into riding bikes, which was sort of the first outdoorsy thing that I did. Like when I was in high school, I started riding a bike a bunch, and then I started thinking like I could ride farther and farther. And then I like found out that there were these bikes called touring bikes, and then started going on like message boards, finding out about like touring bike setups and stuff. And then, so I had done a bunch of like smaller bicycle tours from like the time I was about like 18 to like 23 or so. And I had like the whole time I was just thinking like, man, I got to ride across the country someday. And when I finished grad school, it seemed like the perfect time, especially since I was also kind of determining at that point that I didn't want to do that as a career. So yeah, and I just kind of did it.
You've been bike touring since like before it was cool. I feel like then
oh yeah. I've been bike touring since it was, like I was bike touring when it was only like nerds with those little Velcro straps holding their pants on and stuff.
You probably had the Velcro shoes to go with it, right?
I had Velcro shoes. That was like before BOA was on bike shoes, but yeah, I was bike touring before Surly was a brand, but they only had the long haul trucker and the cross check at that point. Like they didn't have like 10 different versions of a touring bike for every different type of surface that you could possibly want to ride a bike on.
So when you're in your late teens and you go on a bike tour, like what does that look like? Like how many miles are you going? Are you sleeping off the bike? Are you going city to city? What's it like back then before, gravel biking and all this other stuff starts to come into play?
Yeah, it was, I was making my own routes with like a paper atlas that I carried with me. And I had like really like a bad camping setup. I had this like shitty tent. Can I swear on this? Is that okay?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. I had like a really cheap tent. It was like a $50 tent that I bought on the internet before like you could buy much on the internet, and like a cheap sleeping bag and just like a rolled up foam sheet for a sleeping pad and like very little else. And I would just like make routes on a paper atlas. So I had to stick to roads that were on a paper atlas. So like mostly paved highways and stuff. And then I would just kind of ride all day, 60 to 80 miles a day, pretty consistently. And just like find a place to pull off the road and stealth camp, basically. Did a lot of that.
That's wild. That's just wild because I feel like so much of today's day and age is you see it on Instagram, you see it online, and then you start to like aspire to go and do those things, right? And then so like people see other people through hiking and they see it and they see it and they see it, and then pretty soon they're like, well, maybe I want to through hike, and it kind of builds a different way. Versus you, I doubt you were seeing many people doing this at that point. You just thought it was cool.
Pretty much, yeah. I like thought it was cool. I knew no one that was doing it, but I was like just figuring it out.
So what was the biggest pull for you into getting into touring?
Just being able to ride your bike even farther and like not have to like ride 50 miles and then be able to have to go back to where you started. So just like the continued, like I guess the journey, like where you could just keep going and then like stop wherever you want relatively, and then like camp and then just do it again.
Yeah. Was there like certain locations that you were riding to, or was it just like, I mean, was this back east, or where were you riding out of?
So my first ever bicycle tour was around Lake Michigan because I lived in Chicago. I grew up in like the suburbs of Chicago, and I thought like, oh, well, I bet I could ride my bike around all of Lake Michigan. because I knew there was like a bike path along the shore of the lake through Chicago. And then I just like looked at a paper map and saw that there was a road. There was roads that more or less followed the coast. And I just like went for it.
That's awesome. Okay. That makes a little more sense. Like I could see where you're like getting pulled in, like to go, and I don't know. I get pretty goal oriented where it's like I'd want to have maybe a small reason at least. So like going all the way around the lake would be a pretty cool badge to have accomplished.
Totally. And it was like close by and I like saw it all the time. So it seemed like pretty attainable. And I had done a couple like short overnight kind of things to like sort of figure out what I was doing. So that wasn't actually like my first tour, but it was like the first like long one that wasn't like a day or two. And the day or two ones were just like point myself out my front door towards like the nearest state park, which was 100 miles away or something, and then camp there and then ride home.
Yeah. So you do this touring, you go to college, you move out west, start working in a bike shop. When did you start hiking? Because you've done a ton of hiking as well. I mean, you've hiked the CDT, right, and then the Colorado Trail a handful of times. Mm-hmm. So when did that come into play?
PCT
and the PCT?
Well, so that came into play because when I first moved to Colorado, I was living in Denver, and I got this like free, really cheap mountain bike from the bike shop. Like a customer brought it in and it needed like $500 worth of repairs. And it was a $500 bike. And they said, I just want to donate this thing. You can have it. And so then like, I took it and stripped it down to just the frame and then rebuilt it as like a 27 plus bike packing bike. Like, and jokingly said like, oh yeah, I'm going to ride the Colorado Trail with this. And like, I had never mountain biked at all. So then I rode the Colorado Trail with that like trash bike. And there's so many wilderness detours on the Colorado Trail. Like there's one detour around Lost Creek Wilderness. It goes around, I think, 30 or 40 miles of like walking trail through the wilderness. And the detour is 150 miles of biking on like dirt roads that are like pretty hot and exposed and like steep climbing. So like after the third or fourth wilderness detour, I was just starting to think like, man, if I was just backpacking, I could be going through those wildernesses instead of like going around them where it's just a bunch of people with RVs camping. And I could have a real wilderness experience. So then I got a backpack and started backpacking.
So did you finish the CT on the bike then?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Because I was looking at that actually today, and you've got a website, and I was just kind of went on a little rabbit hole there of just looking at that. But I mean, that still looks like a pretty incredible adventure to bike pack the CT.
Totally, it was amazing. I would do it again. It's so incredibly challenging, but I would totally do it again.
What makes it challenging?
It's a hiking trail that they allow bikes on. It's not a biking trail. It's very, it's like it's too steep to ride for a good chunk of it. Like not a good chunk of distance, but like it feels like a long distance when you're pushing your bike up something that would be challenging enough to just walk, and you're pushing up a bike that's loaded with camping gear over and like pulling it over like large scree fields and stuff. It's like really hard. There's a lot of hiking your bike when you're biking the Colorado Trail.
Yeah, I was kind of curious because I knew there's got to be some route arounds and things like that, but I didn't realize that you're still going through sections that just, I don't know, are that difficult, that aren't route arounds per se.
Yeah, no, it's like even last spring I took a friend that had never been bike packing. He wanted to like go out and try it out. And I was like, oh, we'll ride the first segment of the Colorado Trail. It's pretty easy. And when I like got on it again, I realized like, oh, only the first 6 miles is pretty easy. And then it gets like really steep and like chunky. And there's like 2-foot stone steps that you have to either ride over or pull your bike over for like a whole climb. It's
Holy
not
cow.
like, and that's pretty consistent. That's in the tame lower elevation parts.
Jeez. So how long did it take you to bike pack the Colorado Trail?
Took 12 days.
That's,
Yeah, like I'm pretty confident that I could hike it faster than that.
the Colorado Trail in less than 12 days?
Like I think so. I mean, it's really, you barely go faster on a bike. Or at that point, I barely went faster than I could go hiking now, I think.
So are you fast packing? I mean, because it's 480 miles, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you were to hike that 10 days, you're doing 48 miles a day. Are you just hiking, or are you doing any kind of fast packing, running, jogging?
Probably just it would probably be mostly hiking, a little jogging down hills, but yeah, just walk all day. I mean, walking 50 miles in a day is like, 10, 12 hours of solid walking, maybe 13 hours. 13 hours at 3 miles per hour is what? 39 miles. So then you would have to walk, what is that, like 16 hours at 3 miles per hour? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Still 8 hours of sleep. Yeah. It wouldn't be like a walk in the park, real chill, but I think it'd be right. I think it'd be possible.
Yeah. That seems really, really fast. In fact, as a company, our plan this summer is to go out and do like a quarter of the trail, and then maybe do that over the next 4 years, do like 100 to 120 miles, and then come out the next year, do it, so that over about 4 years we can do it as a team. But when you put it that way, it's like, man, maybe we should just blitz. But that'd be pretty intense.
It'd be pretty intense. It'd be let me know if you do it. I'd blitz it with you. But it'd be like it's like it's challenging. It's really hard, but it's like pretty well graded for hiking the whole way.
Okay.
Like I don't want to say it's easy, because it's not easy, but it's like it's like smooth trail for the most part, and like on foot, it's like pretty doable. Yeah. It's very doable. And like you can kind of zone out enough. It's like very well maintained. So
yeah, that's good to know. We've done some sections in some high wildernesses that like you get about to 25 miles a day, and your feet are just killing you from stepping on rocks the whole time, and definitely not super well graded. And anyways, it turns into be a lot of time on feet. So I'll be excited. I'm excited to go out to the Colorado Trail. But so is that your first through hike then? Was the Colorado Trail?
Yeah, that was my first through hike. That was 2017.
Okay, so you've been busy. Yeah. You've been busy since then.
I've been pretty busy since then. Yeah.
Did you do the AT first or the PCT? Or excuse me, not the PCT or the CDT first?
I did the PCT next. I did the PCT in 2019. Yeah. So, and then I did the CDT in 2021. But it seemed I was going to do the CDT first because it was like going through Colorado, and it felt like a obvious like next trail to hike. But then I kind of let the prevailing wisdom that says the CDT is more challenging, and therefore I should do the PCT first prevail. And I did the PCT first.
Well, now in your wisdom, what do you think about that comparison?
I think the PCT is definitely easier. I think the CDT is more rewarding and like consistently more of a wilderness experience. It's definitely more rugged and challenging, but more rewarding.
But imagine that on the PCT, you're hiking a lot with other hikers, like similar to the AT.
Totally.
What is the CDT
feels like? Well, I hike the CDT southbound too, so it's kind of like even harder to get a good idea. Like I feel like the CDT northbound in New Mexico, you'd probably be pretty consistently hiking with other hikers if you wanted to. but even then, like, it's not nearly as, there's not 50 people a day starting the CDT in the spring in New Mexico, but there is absolutely 50 people a day starting the PCT every day from March through May on the P. It's a different level of crowded there. But CDT southbound, I think I met maybe 15 people the whole way, and I hiked around a handful of them for a good chunk of time, and then I hiked around a handful of other people for another chunk of time, and then a lot of the time I was alone too.
Yeah. So going back to just like the challenging aspect of the CDT, I mean, it's more wilderness. You probably have longer gear carry or supply carries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of what makes it harder, is just the supply aspect, or?
Yeah, I think so. Like, CDT was pretty consistently at least 100 miles between resupply points. And there's like the 100-mile wilderness on the AT, which is the thing that everybody talks about the whole trail, which is the longest distance between resupplies, 100 miles. And then that's like pretty common. That's like almost that's like a short one on the CDT in some regards. But so that's challenging. And then there's some parts of it that are just not very well traveled and not very well maintained. And there's there's sometimes not even a trail and you're just cross country walking. So.
Yeah. I imagine it's much more grown in at times and just rougher in that sense of it, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely rougher. Like, even in northern Colorado, I remember like being on the CDT, and then once the Colorado Trail and the CDT join up, it feels like you're on a hiking freeway instead of, cross country walking across ridge lines with no trail.
Yeah. I did like a tiny section of the CDT down in the San Juans, and it was like a month or two after I had been on the AT, and I was just like, this is the most polarizing feeling I've ever had. Because like on the AT, it's like there's a blaze in the tree every 100 feet. The trail's pristine. I mean, it's just, and then like on this one, I'm like climbing over down tree, and I'm like, this isn't this year's down tree. This tree's been here for a couple of years. You know what I mean? Like, and no one has cut this tree out. Like, it was kind of mind boggling to me that they, cause like I get it. Like, if they, like, to me, most of those trails are at least maintained like once a year. They come in and cut out trees. But in this scenario, I was like, these have clearly been here more than a year, so it's like, no one is maintaining this trail.
Nope. And like, it's like pretty far away from the nearest trailheads, like often, to get to some of these spots on the CDT. You'd have to carry a saw through the wilderness like 30 miles to clear those downed trees off the trail. So it's going to be a while before that happens.
You'd want some horses. Yeah. You'd want some horses or something to help you out with that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you do all these through hiking. You had this great but crazy first bikepacking experience on the Colorado Trail, but since then you've really continued to do a lot of bikepacking. So maybe walk me through. I want you to sell me on bikepacking and why I should give this a shot. Like, describe maybe a great route that you've done. What makes it different and unique from backpacking? I'm curious. I've never done it, but I'd love to hear why you actively do both.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so I think the things that are great about bikepacking are you could do like a couple 100-mile route through like beautiful rolling like desert terrain and like cover 50 to 100 miles in a day on dirt roads, see absolutely nobody, and still be able to like, cover 100 miles between water sources or something like that. And like, you could never do that hiking. And, you could never, there's like, it's a totally different experience. You go slightly faster, you go way faster downhill. You can really like just long long routes through the desert are where I think bike packing
I was just going to
excels.
say that. I was like, it sounds like the advantage would be when you get into these really open landscapes, like with a lot of miles between cities. And I'm like, it's basically like southeastern Utah, and some of these routes are like what's coming to mind. Because I'm like, everywhere else, there's just so many people, so many cities, right?
Yeah, no, I think bike packing is best done in the American Southwest, like southern Utah, southern Arizona. I just did an amazing route down there for the second time, actually, called the Sky Islands Odyssey. It's about a 250-mile loop that goes along the U.S.-Mexico border, like south of Tucson, in like the very furthest south part of Arizona. And it's like through this amazing rolling landscape, with like all these massive mountains in every direction. You kind of ride through a couple of the Sky Island ranges, and there's always amazing views in every direction because you're just rolling up and down hills the whole time. And the sunsets are awesome. The sunrises are awesome. And you're like so far away from anything that the camping is amazing. And you can carry a ton of water pretty easily on a bike.
You get stopped by Border Patrol down there very often?
They usually, as a white male, like they just wave to me and keep going. Like they're used to it. They're just looking for not me down there, basically.
You don't have a big enough bag to have.
Yeah, I don't have a big enough bag. I have like nice looking stuff.
So, what's harder on your body, bike packing or hiking?
Probably hiking. Bike packing can be hard on your body. I think I've gotten injured pretty bad with like a loaded bike packing bike kind of like falling on me when I was trying to push like on like intense hike-a-bike sections.
Mm-hmm. But
it's definitely, I think I'd say hiking is a little harder on your body, especially if you have like a heavy pack. So,
yeah. So how much of your gear changes between bike packing and ultralight backpacking, let's say, or through hiking or?
Yeah, not that much. So for bike packing, I have to carry a tent pole because I don't have a trekking pole. I normally use like a trekking pole shelter. Lately I've been just using a single trekking pole supported tarp or a single trekking pole supported tent. So I have like a tent pole to use in place of a trekking pole. And then I use bigger, like more durable water bottles that can like be held on a bike instead of just like cheap,
like a harder plastic,
cheap, like smart water bottles. I use like an Nalgene, or even I've been using one of these, like these big, like 40-ounce clean canteens on a bike too. They're like super durable, and they're a little bigger than a Nalgene, but not as big as the 1.5 liter Nalgene. But other than that, the gear is pretty similar. I usually bike tour or bike pack, bike tour, whatever you want to call it, in bedrock sandals, whereas I don't.
I was just going to ask if you use clip-ins or something. No, just sandals.
Just sandals. But they have a really nice Vibram sole, so they actually like talk really well with the like with platform pedals. So it works. They're honestly like some of the best cycling footwear I've worn. And for bike packing, it's great because then you don't have to like worry about dirty socks. You don't even I have like one pair of sleep socks, and then other than that, I don't even carry socks. It kind of works out pretty well.
That's really interesting. I mean, you got full-time AC just blowing through there.
Yeah. Full-time AC.
And no need to worry about your socks getting covered in dirt every day.
Nope. Yeah. And then like your feet get wet, it doesn't matter. You ride through a stream, you're ready. So
that's awesome. That's pretty interesting, actually. You mentioned a handful of times. durable water bottles. I feel like you maybe have a story around losing some water or just having issues with.
Yeah, I went through a period where I was trying to like bring everything that I had like sort of learned from ultralight backpacking into bike packing, and I was trying to use like smart water bottles on a bike, and when they're not full of water, they just get they get squishy, and so then like a bike, but like a bottle cage, even like an oversized bottle cage designed to fit that size bottle, like doesn't really hold it very well, and then you have to strap it down, but then the strap won't hold it very well because the bottle is kind of collapsing, so it just doesn't work out.
You just need the rigidity, huh?
Yeah, you just need rigidity.
Yeah, I have actually, like in the high mountains where rocks get pretty sharp, dropped a smart water bottle and put a hole right in it. Had to deal with that. So they are breakable, I guess.
Oh yeah, they're definitely breakable. I've
broken a lot better than any of the water bladders I've used, but I've still had issues or seen issues.
Yeah, definitely. Especially the one that you're using, if you filter out of a smart water bottle, like thread a filter onto it, that one always ends up breaking.
Yeah, for sure. So what's this year been like for you, man? Like you just mentioned, you went down, bike toward that. It definitely sounds interesting to me. In fact, I do want to ask this so like you've got gravel bikes, and for those people that don't know, basically a gravel bike is there's no suspension. You've got specific tires on them that are capable on dirt roads, but also, there's not much to them. It's not like a big mud tire that's got any suspension in it. I mean, to me, I look at that and I can't help but think that it looks a little painful to ride those gravel bikes. I mean, does it just go away? Like, do you just get an iron butt and you're just totally good, or like, do you feel that by the end of the day every time?
So I ride more of a mountain bike than a gravel bike is what I'd say. I ride like, usually when I'm bike packing, I have like 2.3 inch tires, whereas a gravel bike can fit like maybe 1.5 to almost 2 inch tires tops generally. There's always exceptions, and like the limits of like what size tire you could fit on like a drop bar gravel bike is constantly being pushed, and now there's like drop bar bikes that can fit 3 inch tires. So but like a pretty typical gravel bike is like, in my opinion, almost a road bike, and I ride a mountain bike on gravel roads if I'm bike packing. It's way more comfortable. It still definitely doesn't have suspension, and you still definitely kind of have a sore body, sore butt at the end of the day. But you kind of like learn to like be one with all the bumps, and like you sort of like let your body like flow with them in a way. You sort of like stand up just enough that like the bike bouncing up and down isn't like jostling you in the butt, and then you kind of lean into it and use your body weight to your advantage.
So I didn't catch that. Did you say it's a mountain bike but still no suspension? Yeah,
it's a mountain bike. It's a full rigid mountain bike is what I ride.
Is it okay? So, is anyone bike packing with like a class 1 style e-bike, like a pedal assist e-bike?
Probably, yeah.
It's not common though.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, the range on an e-bike is still, 50 miles tops, and that's like under ideal conditions with like just a rider that doesn't weigh a lot and like on less steep terrain. So like if you think about that, you'd have to like carry multiple batteries or only do like a 25-mile route.
Yeah.
25 or 50 mile total loop.
I asked this in part because I was at an archery. So I grew up shooting bows and stuff. I was at this archery shoot at a ski resort last year, and there's a handful of hunters that started to use like the fat bike big e-bikes with big fat tires, right? And one of them had this massive fold out solar panel. And I was like, no way you can charge your e-bike with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Their claim was something like 1 to 2 hours of direct sunlight and it would top up the battery. And I was like, I haven't done any more digging on that, but I'm like, man, that's actually pretty dang impressive. If it really is capable of doing that, it would open up possibilities. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's a stretch. But
yeah, I feel like it's definitely doable. You would have to carry like a second. You have to carry a battery besides the massive solar panel. You have to have like a battery to be taking that power, putting it into that battery, and then charging your e-bike battery off of that, probably. And unless you want, like, because once you have a solar panel and then it's going directly into like your e-bike battery, like any inconsistency in the wattage can like affect how that charges and stuff. So
yeah, it just sounds like a lot of
heavy setup, but doable.
Having. Yeah. Probably one of those scenarios that's just
way simpler to just ride your bike.
Just ride the bike.
Yeah.
So what have you? I mean, you mentioned that you have already done some bike packing this year. What else do you have going on? I mean, you just got through this sprint. Well, I guess let me ask this too. So you've been riding in the outdoor space for 3 years, but you've continued to be this big, I'll call it a full-time adventurer. How does that go? Like is the dream here that like you're riding like not riding your bike, but like writing with a pencil on trail about your experiences? Or is it like you just go out and be on your experiences and then you come home and write about it? Like maybe walk me through a little bit of just like what a work-life balance is for someone like you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I guess ideally it would be like, go have an experience and then like afterwards, like, you have some notes and then you write about it. And like kind of just be doing that a bunch, like go back and forth, like go out, have a great experience, document it as much as you can. Like I love taking pictures and shooting videos when I'm out there. But I'm not like, journaling every night like this and then like coming home and typing it up. But and then but then I'll get home and then I'll do some work, like write some content for the outdoor industry, whatever that is. And then I'll after a big sprint of doing that, I'll go back out there and do another trip. And I'm always like scheming more trips. And like, it's always kind of like scheming trips and you're never not working entirely, because like sometimes I'm like testing some gear or at least like thinking about like where I'm going to get like my next like good writing gig and stuff like that. And now like all my personal social media channels have sort of turned into like a marketing, like a marketing channel for like getting like writing clients and stuff. So I'm honestly still figuring it out, and I think I'm getting the hang of it. But yeah, like it's been a few years. This is really the first. I'm in my second year of doing it like as my only job. For a while, I was kind of doing it while also working in a bike shop part-time, and so I'm still figuring it out, but I'm figuring out the balance, and learning every day.
So is it really common for you to come back and work for like a month or two, like you said, and then go back out on trail for like do you kind of do it in blocks like that? Is it like how often or how long are the blocks?
Yeah, I mean, I try to do it in blocks, and then like so that I could kind of just go out and enjoy myself, like have like an experience where I'm not like always thinking like, oh man, I have these, this list of things that I need to do in the next 2 weeks. But there's some of that too. Like it's not all like last summer I did a lot of like 2 to 3 day trips and then come home and like churn out a bunch of work and then go back out for a couple days, come back home, churn out a bunch of work, keep doing that. So, but
so
I also like through hiked the Grand Enchantment Trail. So that was like a month and a half where I didn't work at all. So,
explain that one for people. What trail is that?
That one goes from Phoenix to Albuquerque in like Arizona and New Mexico. And it's about 700 miles. It's like 700 miles. That's a good amount of like bushwhacking through the desert. It's really, really rugged and really cool and rewarding, but pretty challenging.
Yeah. Now it seems like you came from Chicago and then you just love the desert now. Like you between bike.
I love the desert. It's so good. I'm probably going to end up with a home base in Arizona or maybe even like Utah in the next, or New Mexico in the next couple of years. Like it's my longer kind of work-life balance thing. It tends to be like kind of spending more time at home during like the winter when it's, days are longer, colder, all those things. So it like sort of makes sense for my lifestyle to have that home be someplace that I could go and like go on trail runs and backpacking trips all winter long and bike packing trips. And I could do that. I did that for like 2 months this winter in Arizona and it was awesome. And I was just living out of my element at that time, but maybe I'll upgrade the living situation at some point even.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually just hanging out with a handful of people from Colorado and they're all talking about like skiing all winter long. And they're like, and I start after a while, I'm like, man, maybe I should be doing a lot more skiing. Maybe I need to get into that. But I feel like where our headquarters are here in Cedar City, we can be 45 minutes to a ski resort or I can be 45 minutes to the desert. Right.
Yeah.
And so it seems like over the past handful of years, I've just been gravitating towards 45 minutes into the desert and then keep doing the things that I enjoy kind of year round, whatever those are. So there's a lot of attraction, I think, to the desert, especially just with how much more accessible it is. Yeah. Like in the middle of the summer, it's not the best, but like in the 4 season scenarios, it just allows you to do what you love year round, really. So I can see how you fall in love with it for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like the deserts by where you are just incredible. Like the rocks are just otherworldly. And then the sunsets and sunrises are incredible. And then the like desert mountains are so cool. They're like big and like there's a ton of relief and like they're so rocky and rugged. It's really fun. They're just, I love them.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. It is. I mean, I love actually to bring people out here that have never spent much time in the desert because like the consistent thing that I feel like they say is just like, man, I feel like I'm walking on Mars right now. Like, I don't know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen anything like, and that's a lot of fun to me. One, to keep me from ever taking it for granted. But yeah, it's just true though. It's just true. It's like, this is just such unique formations everywhere you look. Right. So,
and like some of the most biodiverse, like ecosystems in the world are deserts. Like the Sonoran Desert has more plants than like any other ecosystem. I'm pretty sure. Like it's there, and like people have this idea of the desert that it's just like devoid of life and a wasteland, but it's absolutely not. And like life there, like has learned to thrive in these really harsh environments. And I think that's really, really special.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think one of my, I like on this podcast, especially, I talk a lot about hiking big miles and seeing all sorts of country, but I mean, I love to just sit too. I can sit there and just watch nature forever. And
same.
Sometimes I think about this. Like I think about like, okay, I need to be successful in a career to make money to maybe one day I'll buy a cabin and I'll sit on this porch of the cabin and I'll enjoy this solitude and lack of busyness. And every time I tell myself that, I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. because like I can backpack anywhere I want. I have a travel trailer that I take my family camping in all the time. It's like I can pull that to millions and millions of public land acres and sit there next to the trailer and watch the same thing today. And I think it's just really common as humans to get in this rat race of things, right? Where it's just all you build for tomorrow, you work for retirement. Like I talk to my parents all the time, like quit working for retirement. Like you guys need to take more time now, like so like I feel like I'm better than my parents, but then I look at guys like you and I'm like, I'm still not enjoying the journey nearly as much as I should be. And I think anyone who's listening to this can probably relate to that to some extent. So I'd love to hear, I guess, just in your mind, why you choose to do what you do and what it is to live this minimalist lifestyle. Because like you mentioned, and well, maybe we haven't covered it enough, you live a pretty minimalist lifestyle. I from my understanding of you don't acquire and retain a lot of things. You stay very mobile at times. I have no idea how many nights you sleep out of your car and just traveling around. But, I guess just explain a little bit of your thought and the benefits of living this more minimalist lifestyle.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's like so much more to life than like accumulating a lot of things so that we could be comfortable one day at like some indeterminate point in the future when we can retire. Like if you just live simply, you can, like my philosophy is like live simply and then you can kind of be, semi-retired all the time. And, I retire like every couple months for a month or two and like, have a like a minimalist enough life that I could kind of make that work. I could like, move into a place and then like sublease my room or just like put the amount of stuff that I have in storage or just like put it all in my car and leave and then go and like enjoy that same, like like that iconic backyard that you could have with that cabin that you save up your whole life for by just, going out someplace on plopping down on some public land and sitting on the tailgate of my car and watching the sunset and cooking a simple dinner on a camp stove. That's pretty magical. But there's pros and cons to all of it. And I'm not saying like this is the only way, but it's the way that I'm kind of finding that works for me.
Well, let me ask this, because I think one of the best ways to view life is to try to fast forward life and then look backwards. So, like, let's say we fast forward your life, Sam, 10 years down the road, and if you were to turn around and look backwards, would you have regrets living this way?
Absolutely not. No. I wouldn't have regrets, but I mean, I think that some people might say that I should have regrets because 10 years from now, I probably still won't like own very many like worldly things that have value. And like, the things that we're kind of taught that we should be like working towards. I probably won't own any of that, but I will have like lived a very full life and have like tons and tons of experiences. And I think those are more infinitely more valuable than like a house that you have a mortgage on, for instance. Not that I wouldn't appreciate like some housing stability every once in a while too.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting because I'm remembering, I don't remember if it's a quote or a study that I read that just talked about how, I believe it was a nurse was just always asking people in a nursing home as they were coming to the end of their life, like what they regretted the most. And most of them said that, they wished that they'd worked less, essentially. That was like one of their biggest regrets in life was just working too much. And I have, it's such an interesting dynamic, right? Because in a lot of ways, like I'm an employer, right? So it's like I need people to work. I can't be sitting here like on this podcast being like, all right, everyone, we don't need to work anymore. Like, come and go when you please. And like we wouldn't do too well. But at the same time, I think there's so much value in the experiences that you can make and optimizing those. And I focus a lot on getting the most out of weekends or 3-day weekends and things like that. I do think that's, and I think what's interesting is you rewind 100 years in history, and you had to work. Like it wasn't like you had the option to take vacations or whatever, right? It was like you had to work to provide food, water, shelter, clothing. And now it's like we work, but we work extra hard to provide better food, better shelters, better clothes.
More clothes than we need.
More, a whole lot more, especially, I know you're not married, Sam, but if you were, you would know the definition of more clothes than you need.
I mean, once you start I believe you. Like once you, even I have more clothes than I need, because when my friends get married, I need to wear something other than like a t-shirt and the dirty hat that I wear all the time and these cutoff shorts.
Packing sandals.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a fascinating thing, and I think that everyone should take time to think about that. As much as you can, and there's choices, right? It's like, well, if you choose to try to take more time off, like you're not going to make as much money. You're not going to because I think that's the problem is everyone wants both sides of it, right?
Yeah.
They want progression in their career. They want more money, but they also want more time off. And it's like, well, those usually don't go super hand in hand. You get to choose one as more of a priority than the other a lot of times. But I think it is worth just constantly thinking about those kind of questions and playing those out for sure. Okay. Well, this has been awesome, man. I've really enjoyed this. I enjoy getting into some of these trains of thoughts. You've made me think a little more about bike packing. I think that would be something that would be a lot of fun. And where it's almost my backyard to get into some really great bike packing country.
Absolutely.
It's something I probably need to try at some point and give it a go. But is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to share, that your wealth of knowledge and experiences? So I know you've got tons to share.
Yeah, I feel like I could just keep talking all day, but I feel like we covered a ton. I don't think we really missed anything that I was thinking like, oh my God, I need to share this with Tayson.
Yeah.
So,
if there are people that are interested in getting into bike packing, where's a good place to learn about that?
So bikepacking.com is like it's a pretty comprehensive resource on the internet that has it has a whole like network of routes that people can create, and then they kind of vet to make sure they're good routes, like with, like public land access, food and water access, et cetera, like legal. And so that's a pretty good place to start. I've written a few like bike packing guides as well. You could find them like for the Colorado Trail and the Kokopelli Trail, which are two of my, favorite bike packing routes that I've done. So I've written, like, if you just Google bike packing, those trails, you'll find my guides and stuff. And really, like, there's a ton of information on the internet, but I think bikepacking.com is a really good place to start.
If you're someone like me who has everything for ultralight backpacking, but I wanted to convert over, so I've got to get a bike, I've got to get some biking equipment. What kind of an investment am I looking at for, we'll just say, a beginner's setup?
Yeah, kind of a lot. Bikes are expensive. Like, I would say you could get away, you'd probably end up spending at least probably $1,000 on a bike. I mean, if you could find something that was suitable that used, it'd probably be like around $1,000. New would probably be closer to $1,500 to $2,000. You could be thrifty and like get a less expensive bike, and like that's probably a good way to start. But like, there's kind of no way getting around it. Bikes are expensive. Other than that, though, if you have ultralight backpacking equipment, you would just also need a frame bag, a handlebar bag, and a seat bag, or like a rack and a bag you could put on the rack. So it's not that much stuff. It's definitely not as simple as backpacking where you just put it all in one bag, though. So
and invest a little bit in some bags, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
The bags probably would be a few $100s minimum. So pretty kind of a lot.
And when you said you sleep in a tarp, or with the tarp, are you using, like, are you sealed in there, or are you just cowboy camping under the tarp?
I mean, I'm just cowboy camping under the tarp. I usually carry.
You kill me. The desert is so. Oh, I can't cowboy camp in the desert, man. There's just so many scorpions and bugs and oh.
Yeah, I just don't think about them. It's been okay so far.
I've had some experiences where just got into a campsite, just spiders everywhere. Or had some different guys in the office that were still doing that for a while. They'd pick up their pad in the morning and there'd be a tarantula under it. A scorpion under it. I was just like, it's just I don't do it in the desert anymore. I don't do it period anymore, actually.
Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah, I don't know. I've had like enough. Like I've had multiple tents that like fully enclosed tents. And then I like use them for long enough that the zipper like gets a bunch of dust in it, and then it stops zipping, and then I end up just like using a tent as if it's a tarp anyways, and then I just stopped using tents as much. Sometimes I use a tent still, and it's definitely cozier, but tarps like it just feels so simple, right? Like super easy to set up. You feel more like you're sleeping outside. It's a little breezier. You get more fresh air.
Yeah.
And
less rain in the desert, I guess. So
rain. I've weathered like a good amount of storms in a tarp too, and it's it's fine.
Yeah. So last question. Let's say someone is interested in becoming a writer in the outdoor space, right? Like I imagine like when I was a kid, I was really interested in like motorcycles. Like I grew up on a motorcycle, and that would have been like my dream job, right? It's like, man, if I could write about motorcycles, and then I could just ride motorcycles, and then I could just dream about motorcycles. So let's say we've got someone out there who's listening that just feels that way about backpacking or the outdoor industry in general. What advice would you have for them if they wanted to get into writing?
Start doing it. Start documenting your any journeys that you're taking, like both photos and written. Like start a website, start a blog. Just start doing it, and just like keep at it, and just try. Just like keep writing stuff, and like you have to like come up with cool stories and pitch them to editors at publications, and then someone will eventually say like, hey, this sounds interesting. Yeah, I want you to do that. Or often it'll be more like, we don't want that, but we actually really need this person to write this thing. Will you do that? So, like just like do it, and then keep at it, and don't like be ready for some rejection, and just like keep at it. And eventually you'll start gaining traction.
So you've talked a little bit about copywriting as well. I imagine you have to use a lot of that just when you're pitching articles too, right? I mean, you're trying to sell your skills, right?
Yeah, totally. Like, I feel like I'm a good copywriter because I can, I could essentially write a fully fleshed out essay in 4 sentences, and that's what a pitch is. You're writing a pitch, or you're writing like a letter of introduction to like a potential, like a potential copywriting client. You're like selling yourself in as few words as possible because everyone's busy. everyone like doesn't have a ton of time to read your whole life story just to find out whether or not they want to work with you. Like, you tell them what they need to know, and like that's it. And so,
yeah. Well, it's been awesome, Sam. Where do people go if they want to read any of your stories? Or I guess I know you've got an Instagram account. They can go see some of your awesome photos.
Yeah, I have an Instagram account. It's SIA_lizard. And then I have a website. It's samschild.com. And I'll be updating my website soon now that I'm done with this blitz of like copywriting gigs and stuff. And those are the two main places to find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I think it's super fascinating. I love what you do, and I love just the fact that you're living the dream, man. You're living your best life, and I think it's really inspiring. So appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you having me on. This was really fun.
Yeah. All right. I hope you guys absolutely loved that interview with Sam. Sam's a very fun guy to be around and has a wealth of knowledge and stories. So it was really fun to dive into just his career path, the things that he does with his time. And I hope that it inspires you guys. It definitely, anytime I talk to someone like Sam, it inspires me to really check myself and make sure that I'm living a balanced life, living a life that when I look back, if I was 10 years ahead of right now and I looked back, that I would be happy and not have regrets with the decisions that I'm making today. So I hope that challenges you guys to do the same. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Again, make sure you head over to outdoorvitals.com and check out all the new things we have going there, new releases, new product releases. And if you've not yet left a review on the podcast, please do so. If you've made it to this point in the podcast, obviously you're a fan. So please go give us a review there. That does help us with our mission of helping more people get outside more comfortably, more confidently, and thereby more frequently. So really appreciate your guys' time. Make sure you guys are subscribed, and we'll see you guys in a future podcast episode.